Welcome back to Alive and Well Community's Daily Dose, your daily dose of support. As we continue to build out our self-care toolkit, we want to also take into consideration that self-care is going to be different for different individuals. But we also have to take into consideration that self-care may not be accessible the same way to everybody. So today, I'm really excited that as we continue this conversation about really focusing on our self-care, that we're really going to integrate culturally responsive self-care. And to have this conversation, we are joined by some delightful guests. And I'm so excited to introduce to you Sarah and Felicia. Sarah and Felicia, thank you so very much for joining us this morning as we continue to build out really our self-care toolkits and learn how to take excellent care of ourselves.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Well, before we get rolling right along, let me share a little bit about our guests with you all who are tuning in. So we have Sarah, who is the Mental Health Integration Manager at LifeWise. She's also a social worker and a therapist, really focusing on maternal mental health as well as perinatal women. And then we also have Felicia, who is a youth therapist who's bilingual and working especially with ages from 3 to 13. So I'm so excited that you all are here with us as we think about culturally responsive self-care. So in a way that we can all build out those toolkits to really take excellent care of ourselves. So can you first share with us just a little bit about the program LifeWise that you all are representing?
Yeah. So Felicia and I work at LifeWise. We work in the family development department, and we work with primarily parents and their children. And a lot of what we do when we are in the building is really work mostly with mothers about creating space for themselves in order to better meet their children's needs. We both speak Spanish, so we do a lot of this work in Spanish. We do it in English, and we also work with a group of Somali women.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I know, Felicia, that you specifically work with youth in a broad range there, ages 3 to 13.
Yeah. We have an early childhood center and an after school program, which is more of like an enrichment program after school. So I work primarily with children who are already in the building or involved in the programming. And then sometimes I'll work with Sarah's mom's children as well. So I have a lot of different touch points coming in from different places. So when I'm doing work with 3-year-olds, it's mainly in a group format, and I try to adapt sunshine circles to meet the needs of the littles. And then I use play therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy techniques with the older children that come my way. And then again, I do most of that bilingually. So a lot of times I'll be speaking and switching languages with kids and then with parents primarily in Spanish, although I do get some English speaking clients as well.
Wonderful. So a broad range of clients.
Mhm.
Now, I know we talk a lot about self-care, and one of the things that you two really focus on highlighting is that sometimes when we think about self-care, it might not be accessible to everyone in our community. So as we're really working to build an alive and well community, we need to make sure that self-care is really culturally responsive and something we can connect to. Can you two speak a little bit more to that for us?
Yeah, you want to take it, Felicia?
Sure, I can start. Oh, sorry, I had coffee, and so now I'm just like a little. Anyway, so usually I'm just going to touch on this briefly and then talk a little bit about how we can adapt it to work with a little bit more culturally responsive and a more culturally responsive manner. So when we're thinking about self-care, there are a few inventories out there and research that pulls out these sort of 6 subcategories of self-care. So it's not just this one idea of, oh, I need to paint my nails, or oh, I need to go get a massage, which we kind of can't do anyway right now. But there are different ways to practice self-care. and that different areas that we should pay a little bit of attention to. So the 6, which you might be familiar with, are physical, relational, spiritual, mental, emotional, and professional. And then you start thinking about, oh, wow, there are that many different categories in which I need to take care of myself. And sometimes that can be really daunting. I know that when I first heard about this, I was thinking, oh, physical self-care. I need to start running like 2 times a day, every day, or doing like more physical exercise. And right now, that can be even more difficult. Gyms are closed, and maybe like exercise is just not your thing at the end of the day after like working with your kids, maybe still going to work. It can be even more exhausting. But physical self-care doesn't always have to mean something like I need to go for a run. It could be something like, did I get the amount of sleep that I need that night? Did I take a stretch break? It could be a little bit more accessible than what we had thought of before. And maybe Sarah will touch on some of those too in a little bit, in case I blank. But we would also like to add a 7th category that we've noticed is really important, and it's this idea of cultural self-care. A lot of us, maybe a lot of us, I'm not sure, we have a community, a population in the United States that is very multicultural. And it's something I notice as being biracial is that when I was not in touch with my like Latino community, I was not taking care of a part of me that was really important. And it can be almost even more important for people coming from different areas of the world, different Latin American countries, to have a sense of community here, to take care of those cultural needs, to have access to making a homemade dish that brings back really important memories for them, or that makes them feel like they're at home, listening to music or like certain dances and things like that are also really important, because our cultural identity is very important to our overall well-being. And so we like to try and provide a space through MOMentos, when we're in person, where we can be accepting and open to other people's idea of culture and support them in the most loving, caring, open-minded way possible, trying to have those culturally responsive kinds of interventions, being able to identify with their culture and maybe our own experience as well is something that we've seen as something that is very important to them and to us as well. So I don't know if Sarah has anything else to add about it, but I feel like that's something that's very unique to working with an immigrant population and even a more growing multicultural population.
Yeah, and I would add that a lot of times we hear the phrase self-care and people kind of opt out or decide, okay, that's not for me, because as Felicia mentioned, it can often be maybe something that's not accessible. So a lot of the work that we do is kind of just talking through what is self-care. Like Felicia mentioned, some of the really sleeping. It's making sure you're eating as much as you need to, or as often as you need to, right? And I think that there's what we do a lot with the women that we work with is interweaving. It's not an all or nothing thing. It's not a I am an excellent teacher to homeschool my children in this moment, or I am terrible, right? There are times where that is self-care might say, hey, we're going to set this curriculum aside, or we're going to say, one of the examples I was thinking of is my children, they're little, but they have to, research an animal or research, and they're given some choice in there. So that is a place where now I can insert my culture, right? Let's take some time to learn about where I grew up so I can enjoy this with you and it doesn't feel like a struggle. So now it's not an all or nothing thing. It's finding the intersections where we're caring for each other.
Absolutely. And I love that you all talk not just about the importance, but the different domains of self-care so we can really enhance our well-being. Wonderful. Now, I know that you all as a program work a lot with parental well-being. And we see parents facing such unique challenges as, attempting to continue to be providers for their family, continuing to be nurturers in their family. And now they may have additional responsibilities of caring for their children all day long because there's, no physical schooling happening right now. And so they may also have the responsibility of providing education for their children, and they may be caregivers to elderly family members. How is it that you all really focus and promote self-care of parents? Because we know sometimes as parents, that seems to be our lowest priority with everything else going on. So how is it that you all really speak to the importance of that and really help parents understand the importance of it?
Yeah, it's so true. It is like the lowest of priorities, right? But in reality, it really needs to be the highest, because if we can't take care of ourselves, there's no way that we're going to be able to do all the things that we need to do right now for our children. So one of the things when our building closed down that we did almost immediately was move everything that we were doing to an online platform.
Mhm.
And that is the MOMentos or MOMentos page. And in there, we go live 3 times a day, and in Spanish. So at 10 a.m., Felicia talks about youth mental health and different attachment activities, and also just topics that parents can interact with their children around. At 11 a.m., we do a read aloud in Spanish. And then at 1 p.m., supposedly nap time, we do a MySpace, like a time for moms. It's like a 10-minute kind of check-in. And during these 3 things, we really bring over and over and over the importance of identifying, taking the shame away. If you feel overwhelmed, that is okay. That is normal. Providing grace, where sometimes we can't give it to ourselves, that grace and compassion that we need, we try to provide it. And we think it's really important to do this in Spanish because there are a lot of really amazing resources, this one included, that are in English for people. But that's, again, there are folks that only speak Spanish that are marginalized and can't access these amazing resources. So we really wanted to try to create a resource that just is a constant. We're here, you're doing great. If you're not doing great, let's talk about it. You're still doing great,
No, and I think you highlighted something that's so crucial, that some of us may take for granted that, maybe there aren't those self-care and well-being resources that are available and accessible during this time of high stress for people in their native language or their language that they most closely identify with. And so that can add an additional layer of stress, just not having access to those tools for our well-being.
Exactly.
And we're doing it on Facebook. It's kind of another way that we're trying to be culturally responsive. It's something that we've noticed throughout with the community as we've been in touch, that's something that they really access as one of their main modes of communication. And maybe your typical, I don't know, private practice person would not be doing things like this, but we find it something that is almost a necessity for us to be able to really reach out to those clients and to be more easily accessible at this point when they need the support, either like mentally, emotionally, but also for basic needs as well. So we've kind of had to shift quite a bit, but it's definitely been a really good experience and a lot of areas for growth for all of us, I believe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that phrase of accessibility is key in this to ensure that the content and the resources and just knowing the support is out there, and not just out there, but truly accessible and accessible in our very own community. So can you all share some of those self-care tips that you might give to parents who are now facing, potentially more stressors than previously?
Yeah, I'll start with a couple, and I know Felicia has some more hands-on ones. working with moms, again, that idea of self-care, and even less now, right? Before we used to have groups and we would be like, come, have an hour, chill, talk with other women, leave your children in the childcare, and that's not an option. So we're still trying to provide those moments for women to connect. But one of the really hard things for all of us is not getting that, like, what was a natural built-in space from our kids for ourselves. So again, as we look at it as parents, maybe not being like it's an either or. I'm with my kids all the time and I can't enjoy myself. So looking for things that you enjoy doing. Maybe it's gardening, maybe it's going on a walk, maybe it's writing, reading, cooking, dancing. I mean, there's all sorts of things. And we're all doing a lot of little more of those things that we weren't doing before. So instead of that needing to be something that is done like in solitude, maybe teaching your child, including your children. It's going to be a different experience, but kind of like shifting our focus and including them into something that brings us peace. And then we're also then modeling like that importance of self-care, right, to them. So it has a double benefit.
Oh, so not just, speaking the speak
Yeah.
of self-care, but actually truly modeling it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Felicia, did you want to add something to that?
Through the MOMentos page and the things that I've been trying to do interactively with children, I have shifted a lot towards how do I help these parents help themselves and their kids, and how can I get to the parents at a level where they can also feel good about themselves. And so a lot of my interventions, some of them have shifted from like trying to focus on the kids, but like how do I, because I can't do one-on-one stuff with them as much as I could before, but how can I infuse some of the knowledge that I have about what works with kids and help the parents kind of manage some of the stressful things that they're seeing. I have gotten a lot of concerns about children's behavior just because right now kids are expressing themselves definitely differently than adults might be. I don't know. More tantrums. Maybe we feel like we're going to have a tantrum on the inside, and that's completely fine. But just trying to make it so it's like I present things at a level to parents, and then hopefully they can take that and present it or use that knowledge to model things at a level for their kids. One of my main things has been shifting this idea because of that feelings are good or bad. Because right now we're having so many of them. And how do we shift this idea of feelings being good or bad to just being signals, and how can we pay attention to them? I have one parent that's being an absolute rock star and is like, man, this has been an opportunity for me to see my kid's triggers and model for him in those moments what I do, because I see a lot of myself in them. And so it's been a lot of reframing that, yeah, this is kind of really trying and taxing on us sometimes because we have our own feelings and it's really stressful, and it's okay to have them. But also like look at this as an opportunity to like see your kids in all these realms, and how can we use this knowledge to help them now and prepare for when we have to go back to some way of interacting with other humans. I don't want to say back to normal. I want to say like maybe more back to society in general. And a lot of parents have really taken that to heart, which I've been really, really proud of, and have been reaching out and wanting to talk to me about things like scheduling, because schedules are kind of a thing that don't exist anymore. So.
No, and I think being able to find the opportunity in this time and seeing it as an enriching opportunity is really incredibly powerful. Of how do I get to better support my children, of how do I get to have better insight into how they work and what supports them and their well-being. I think that's really incredibly rich, and it takes a lot to be able to reframe in that way of this is an opportunity, and not seeing it as just a lack of opportunity during this time.
Mhm.
Now, I know that you all do a lot of concurrently supporting parent and child well-being. So not just, this notion of this is what we do for children, this is what we do for parents, but how do we come and bring the two together, whether it be caregivers or guardians or those who may have responsibility for nurturing their children during this time?
Yes, we do a lot of dual or multi-generational approaches. And we're trying to continue that in our building. It's, again, a little easier. We have a childcare center. We have after school. So, like, mom might be picking up a child and stopping in to see us. It's a very communal sense in our building. And so part of our work has been recreating that support system that's a positive social capital, positive connection in an online platform. And then also for those who don't have access to Facebook. So how do we keep creating that access? Because we also think that again, like this sense of community, right? Like Felicia and I are the social workers, and yes, we are a source of knowledge, but also each and every one of our participants is a source of knowledge too. And we want people to be able to connect with each other, not just us, to get that needed sense of community that they might be longing for, or that information or that knowledge.
Wonderful. No. And we know that community, even though we may be socially distant, it's still really crucial for us to be emotionally connected and feel like we have that support system during this time, even though they may not physically be present for us.
Very
Mm.
true.
Oh, and then Felicia, you do so much then with children and children of such a broad age range, and I really find it powerful to helping us shift our understanding as we look at feelings neither as positive or negative, but how do we tune into them as really signs of what's going on or what we're experiencing. Also knowing that rarely is it just one emotion that we're experiencing at a time. We know feelings are complex and we may not always have the words to describe everything that's going on. So how is it that you work with children to kind of be able to process of understanding, okay, I'm having this feeling, I may not understand it. How do I start to, recognize their different needs that may be present for me?
Right. So I'm still meeting with a number of my clients individually, which I find to be, I don't know, I'm very touched because I miss them so much.
Mhm.
It's definitely been really hard to shift from seeing them in person because I do a lot of play. Like that's my main modality. I really do believe that play is the language of children, and a lot of work can be done through play therapy techniques through play. And so I've had to shift to some more, how would you say, responsive. I don't know, technology responsive kind of ways to relate to kiddos, and it's amazing. I don't know. I mean, I'm weird. I really love like things like Disney and different clips and cartoons and things that I can bring up to work with kiddos. So I've used a lot of things like Inside Out, a lot of things that kids can really kind of relate to when I'm doing things through virtual stuff. And kids still bring it up and we'll talk about like their feelings as they relate to certain experiences. We've talked about grief because right now a lot of kids are grieving what's going on, and that kind of ties in those mixed emotions, right? Like I'm happy I get to stay home with mom and I have the opportunity to be at home and get to be with my family, and I miss my teacher and I miss like all these other things, like I don't get to go to summer camp maybe, and so it's like there's a lot of these mixed kinds of things, and so we'll draw on those experiences if they feel comfortable, and if not, I will draw on more generalized experiences that they could have, and I just kind of follow the kid on where they go. I use some CBT with my older kids, and so it's been really cool. I'll use like cartoon strips, and we'll fill in the thoughts, the feelings, and behaviors of the cartoon strips and how they interact with each other. And then we'll draw that into their own experience because they start to kind of pull on, oh man, I was thinking this and I felt this and I did this thing. And that was not okay. And so I'm still trying to pull in some like aspect of play by using some more fun ways to talk about this kind of stuff and that connection. It's just not the same. So it's hard for me to do little bitty work. I captured some sunshine circle, theraplay kind of things with some of the moms for like younger kids and self-regulation. So some of the songs and movements and things like that. Unfortunately, a lot of them are in English, but I've been able to help coach some of the parents through it because I am there to do it. And that's been something that I still feel, even though I can't see the itty bitties, which is really hard for me. I know that like parents are really taking some of this stuff to heart. A lot of theraplay recommendations have been to switch to helping with parents because it is so hard to access the kids right now. And so I feel like we are being a little bit more responsive and that kind of manner, especially with the MOMentos page, and then being available for parents to consult about what's going on with their kids to be seen and heard.
I love all the different tools and means by which you help foster and nurture that social and emotional development. So that's just really touching, and I can actually see how much you miss all the kids. Oh.
Yeah, it's horrible right now. Yeah, like we were off topic. We went and like we did Mother's Day t-shirts for some of our participants because we usually do like a big thing like a mom's brunch, and we couldn't do that this year. And I dropped some stuff off at some kids' houses, and some of them still just don't understand social distancing. And one of the kids like came running, and like I didn't even have a chance to say like, "Oh no, stop," you know. And I like almost like went to my car and was like, "Oh my gosh, I miss them so much." So knowing that, you know, we all miss them too kind of helps, I guess. It's just really hard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been, you know, a time of transition for all of us. And I think sometimes as, you know, as helping professionals, we don't recognize, you know, our own loss as we're trying to help others navigate through this time, but recognizing that, you know, there's a sense of longing that we have too.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Sarah and Felicia, before we conclude, I know that you wanted to walk us through an activity, and I want to make sure that we have time to do that. And so will you go ahead and tee us up for that?
Absolutely. So this is an activity that we wanted to share. Some of you might be familiar with it. It is a Where I Am From poem by George Ella Lyon. And it's actually, this is an example of hers, but she has generously provided a template. And we've used this a lot in groups, and we use this in individuals, and it's really just a beautiful way to, if you like to journal, if you like to just take 10 minutes to reflect, it's something that you could do as your own self-care individually, but it's also something that we would encourage people to do with their children or family members. And it just goes through, it's actually just a template, and it goes through, it's very easy to do. And at the end, you have this beautiful kind of representation of your roots, the good, the bad, where you're from. It's also a really beautiful way to represent culture. That's why we find it very useful. And we find it, each line starts with I am from. And you can then switch it. A couple of times we've done that as an activity where we write you are from, and moms in our perinatal group will write a poem to their baby, which is also just a beautiful sentiment. And so it's something that you could do for yourself. It's something you could do with your child. It's something you could do for your child. There's a lot of different ways that you could use this. And it's really just kind of pulling together, like Felicia said, emotions aren't good or bad, they just are, right? And it's kind of looking at our whole past and our roots, and maybe just kind of looking at it objectively. It's not good or bad, it's just, it is, it's where I've been, and this is where I am now.
And if you're going to do this with your kids, because a lot of parents who are here as immigrants, the children are multicultural. They are at a home where one culture is the norm, and they're out in society where another culture is the majority. And this can be a really good looking glass into like how a parent really sees themselves and how a child sees themselves, and maybe an opportunity to readjust some of those expectations because it's just so different. And maybe there's some things that you can pull on that are the same, and foster a mutual respect for where each of you is coming from. It's just a beautiful kind of experience that you guys can have if chosen to do it that way.
Yeah, I really love how, in this poem, you're honoring all the different parts of self, recognizing I'm not one thing or another. I'm a combination of many different things. And, from these moments, I am uniquely me. And I
Yeah.
think that's really powerful. So we'll be sure to share the template that you've sent us in the link below the film, so people can access that, use it as a tool and resource. And I think it's just incredibly powerful. I look forward to finding some time to reflect and do it myself to honor the different parts of me. So thank you so very much for sharing these resources with us. We so greatly appreciate it. And we know that you all have taken time out of your busy schedules to be here with us. And we just want to take an opportunity to say a very special thank you for us to share your knowledge and wisdom with all of us to make sure that we can truly be an alive and well community.
Thank
So,
you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
absolutely. Well, before we conclude, a few things for our viewers. Your daily challenge is going to be how is it that you really honor and you really practice that cultural component of self-care? Recognizing that we all need to honor, celebrate, recognize, and incorporate that into our overall well-being. So think today about how you're going to do that, and maybe using this poem template might be a great way to do so. But regardless of how you choose to do it, make sure you incorporate that in your self-care today. Another announcement for our viewers who are tuning in, we're going to be releasing a link for you all today. And what we need to hear from you is, as we continue in this time of social distancing and those practices continuing to happen, although we do see some businesses reopening, we know that it's still crucial that we take excellent care of ourselves. And we want to recognize that we'll still be probably spending much more time at home than we ever would be pre-COVID. But we want to honor that you may need this tool and resource in a very different way. So we're going to be releasing a link to get feedback from you about how would you like to see the daily dose continuing, in what shape and what form would best be supportive to you. And so we're going to ask you to take time to fill out that link, so we can hear from you and be responsive to that. So, for all of our viewers tuning in, either live or after the fact, remember to take excellent care of yourselves. And then to our special guest today, thank you so much for being with us and honoring us with your wisdom and knowledge. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Well, we'll see you all next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.